Welcome to Wellness Made Easy with Wendy and Kirsten.
Hi, I'm Wendy. After I graduated with my master's in wellness management, I started my own company, T2 Coaching, Health, Fitness, and Sport.
And I'm Kirsten, an athlete, vegan, life coach, and girl mom, running a business focused on helping others create a life they love.
We are here to explore all things wellness to help you become the person you've always wanted to be.
So if that's why you're here, open your ears and your mind as we tackle the world of wellness together. Hey everyone. Hi, Wendy.
Hi, Kirsten. Hi, everyone. How are you?
I am wonderful. How are you doing?
I'm doing really good.
We're both a little flustered and rushed coming on here today. And we spent like 3 minutes laughing, but here we are.
And I love that part. Like it's a true belly laugh whenever we go and try to start this. It's just because we had so many problems in the beginning. It's
Right.
that anticipation of, can you hear me?
That anticipation of, are we going to have problems?
Yeah.
I just had coffee, and I say coffee in quotes because I don't drink coffee, but they do. With a couple of my athletes that I coach, we did a indoor sprint triathlon this morning. And we were having coffee, and all of a sudden I looked at the clock and I was like, oh crap, I have to go. And they're like, oh, what are you doing? I'm like, well, Wendy and I are recording our podcast. And I was like, I haven't even looked at the outline. I go, we kind of fly by the seat of our pants. And they were both like, yeah, that's totally you guys.
Right. Which is the reason it makes our podcast so awesome.
Right. Is because, and I did look, and last week was our 10th episode. So we are on episode number 11. So congratulations to us.
Yeah, we're doing
great.
great.
One of my friends I was telling her about, I was like, yeah, we talked about blah, blah, blah on the podcast. And she goes, wow, you guys are just pumping those out. And I go, well, we do it once a week consistently. And she was like, that's impressive. So I said, thank you. And congrats to us.
Yeah. And it takes time. I mean, I remember when I started with Dave Erickson Endurance Hour, when he invited me to be the co-host in probably 2017. And I believe he started in 2010. He was already established and there wasn't many podcasts back then. And now it's like everyone does a podcast.
I know.
So, again, our listeners out there, please rate, review us, share with others so we can, grow and flourish and provide information that you want to hear. So that would be very helpful.
Maybe reach an audience of people who don't already know us.
Yeah, that's what we're looking for.
I'm sure at the beginning it's all people you either know me or you know Wendy or you know both of us.
Which is great. Thanks for listening.
I was just going to say, which is amazing. Thank you guys. You're awesome.
Yes.
So what is your wellness win for the week, Wendy?
My wellness win. I have a couple. So my first wellness win, which I didn't think I talked about last time, was I was interviewed by a New York Times editor who writes their wellness portion of the New York Times. And she interviewed me about the Galloway run walk method. And the reason she chose me is because she heard me talk about it. Again, it must have been on the Endurance Hour podcast when we used to do that. Years ago, we were probably answering a listener question, but for I don't remember what episode, we were talking about the run walk method, and she knows I'm a wellness person. So she did an interview on me, and it was just really fun. And hopefully she's going to be able to use our stuff that we talked about in her upcoming article that I can share with everyone.
You'll have to let us know if it gets published so we can look for it.
Yeah. So that was a huge non-training related wellness win. And I think for me, my training wellness win is I feel as of today, 100% recovered from the 50K that I ran a week and a half ago. So it's almost been it'll be 2 weeks this weekend that I did this 50K. And, the first week I'm kind of like, and then going into this week, I'm like, I really shouldn't be recovered right now, but today I'm like, no, I think I'm there. So that just, again, reminds myself how good the nutrition and the sleeping is so important for recovery and just general well-being. So I'm feeling pretty good about that.
Ooh, that's awesome. And that just made me think, I'm going to make a note. We should do a episode on how typically you feel going into a race and coming out of a race.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think if you, an endurance race or something that you've been training a lot for, because I feel like if you've never experienced it, you are going to think that you are doing something wrong or you shouldn't be feeling a certain way. Like
Mhm.
during a taper, I feel horrible up to the race day. And people are like, "Oh, I'm tapering. I should have energy. I should feel good." And I would say for me and a lot of the athletes I coach, and we can do an episode on this. I feel horrible until race day, and then I magically feel good. And then after a race, physically, mentally, and emotionally, especially if it's my A race, I feel kind of depressed and kind of down and lethargic and low energy and just all different ways. And I think it'd be valuable to talk about that. So let's put that on our list.
Yes, and I have a ton of things to say about that. And again, we're approaching the kickoff of Ironman, especially, I know Ironman, we do Ironman. We coach a lot of athletes doing Ironman, but
Right.
Ironman North America events 70.3 start in March with Ironman Puerto Rico and then Oceanside 70.3 in early April. And then bam, like every weekend there's a race.
Right.
So definitely I think it's a good up-to-date topic to discuss. I know I would love to share my post Ironman depression syndrome that I majorly had in 1997 after my very first Ironman. And I like to share that story because, again, there was no coaching, there's no
Right.
internets, there was no podcasts, you didn't know this stuff existed until you went through it. So I
Right.
like to share those types of
Okay. Let's put it on
experiences.
our list in the next few weeks.
Yeah, cool.
All right. So my wellness win, I had my solid wellness win, which was non training related. But then today after my sprint try, I have a training related one too. So I spent last weekend in Las Vegas with my family, my brother, my sister, their spouses, and their kids, all my nieces and nephews. And my daughter and I road tripped. We drove out. It took 14 hours to get out there because it snowed the whole day going out, and then 12 hours to get home. And
Oh,
it was just a great experience and a good reminder that wellness, Wendy and I always say this, but a good reminder if this is your first time listening to us, wellness encompasses all the areas of our lives. And we did a whole podcast 2 weeks ago on relationships, and 100% I believe that that's just said you're recording. I'll continue on a new track, but I think that's fine. All right. Because I still see you. um, it our connection with others is a really big part of our wellness and affects our physical, mental, and emotional health. And it was just a really good experience. I did a really great job I did a gym day one day. I took my brother and his wife, and we went to Lifetime one day for a few hours. I did a run one day for an hour. So a good balance of spending time with the family, but also continuing to do a couple things that fill me up. So that was huge. And that was going to be my only wellness win. But today I did once a month. I've been doing this indoor sprint triathlon with a few of the clients I coach that are local. And I have not done any intensity since last month's. Like all my workouts have been pretty like zone 2, zone 3, like nothing major. And I never know going into doing any sort of time trial or race. If I haven't done any intensity, I really don't know what my body's going to do. And amazingly enough, my overall time was I think 10 seconds faster than last month. And that's with just getting on the bike, spinning my legs. I actually have only run once. I'm not in the running mode. So I've been doing elliptical. I've been doing the step mill. I've been walking on the treadmill, doing everything but running. And I've only been swimming once a week at the most because of my tattoo. So the fact that it was the same, like 10 seconds faster, thrilled me. And it's a reminder how good it feels to push myself a little bit, because I get in this lazy mode of just doing like endurance, but I don't need to build my endurance. I've been doing endurance for 25 years. If I want to get faster, I need to do these intense sessions. And so it just felt amazing, really positive, and reminded me that this is super important and valuable, not only to my training, but for my mental, physical, and emotional health.
Yeah, because when you have that endorphin high from whatever you're doing, that's the mental health part of all this. I always tell athletes, especially this time of year, who have been, especially if they've been cooped up and training indoors, getting outdoors, vitamin D is the answer. You produce vitamin D when you get that sunlight. And vitamin D helps with mood and energy levels, as well as vitamin E, meaning vitamin endorphins. And so for those athletes who have seasonal depression disorder, who are just itching to get outside, I think it's just really important, if they're in these moods, but they don't know why, like negative moods.
Right.
First thing I tell them is you need those vitamin endorphins and you need the vitamin D now. Get out there and do something to get that, because it helps clear your brain fog. It helps that mental clarity. And again, that's a huge wellness win. When you're mentally sharp and you're mentally focused and you're just mentally there, that just kind of helps with all areas of wellness.
Yeah, 100% agree. So our topic today is a little bit different, as far as it's something that is a little more sensitive, I think, for some people. And so we just want to, as we go through our episode this week, we want to just be mindful of this is something that a lot of people have an emotional tie to, that's really strong, and it's scary. And some people still are in the throes of having a really hard time. And so just know that we want to educate people and kind of share our own experiences, so that if you are struggling, you know that you're not alone. And we want to talk about eating disorders. This week is National Eating Disorder Week. No, this week that we're recording, it's February 24th to March 2nd, I believe the week is. And Wendy actually has a lot of extensive knowledge. She did her thesis on eating disorders in athletes. And so she's going to talk a lot about that. And then we both are personally have struggled with some sort of eating disorder, which in my opinion, never really goes away. Even if you are not doing anything unhealthy, in my experience, it's a lifelong, I don't want to say struggle, because I don't like that word, but it's always in the back of my head. It's always on my mind. I'm just not actively pursuing it.
Well, and again, saying the word struggles, we wouldn't have success if it wasn't for our struggles. I think all our struggles in life, for a lot of people, will either has led to success or will lead to success. So, don't feel like struggle in the moment is really difficult and it's really challenging, but just know futuristically, it's probably going to lead to some success with some sort of area of wellness in your life.
Yeah. And I don't, and you could tell your story too, Wendy, about, why you got into all of this back in college, but I actually got my degree, my exercise and sports science, my nutrition. I pursued all that for myself because I wanted to learn how I could, and I'll be honest, I wasn't like, ooh, I want to be the healthiest I can be. I was 18. I was 17 when I started college. I always struggled with my weight. I struggled with my weight. I'm not saying I was heavy. In my mind, it was a struggle for me. I was heavier than I wanted to be. I didn't like my body. I wanted to figure out how I could lose weight or be thinner or like my body more. And that's what brought me into this, my major, my minor, and everything that I learned in college, which then turned into me working at gyms my entire life, becoming a swim coach, becoming a triathlon coach, and leads me to where I am now. So my reason I got into this field was because I wanted to figure out how I could change my body so I liked it more. And it's not all going to happen. It's a lot of head stuff. It's a lot of mental, emotional stuff. But in the process, you're right, 100%. The struggle of that in my life that I had been having since I was a kid has brought me to where I am in my profession, which is exactly where I love to be, I'm meant to be, and I do a lot of good.
Yeah.
So
let me jump into my story. So my undergraduate degree is math education, and I got, excuse me, and I was a swimmer in college. And after my freshman year, my swim coach said, I don't know how she said it, but she's like, lose 5-10 pounds over the summer. Well, it happened that summer I had major surgery. I had my ovary removed. I had some complications. And back then they actually cut you open. So we're thinking, I don't know, I'm thinking 1992, 1991, 1992. And so just due to surgery, I had lost the 5 to 10 pounds because after surgery, I was really bloated. I really didn't have an appetite for weeks, months. And so I came back my sophomore year thinner. Everyone's telling me, you look great. You look great. Oh, good job. You lost the weight. And I didn't try to do it. It's just something that happened. And at the same time, I started multi-sport. And so during my swimming off season, I was running and biking and doing a lot of activity because I found multi-sport. And so the thoughts and the people telling me how good I look, I'm thinner. If I look good now, well, I guess I don't know if this was what I was thinking. If I look good now, 10 pounds lighter than I was, I'll look better. Maybe if I'm thinner. And again, I don't know if that's the exact reason because I didn't have a full-blown eating disorder. So let me jump into that a second. When you're thinking eating disorder, the eating disorders, there's types of eating disorders. There's anorexia nervosa, there's bulimia nervosa, there's binge eating disorder, there's restrictive food intake disorder, there's orthorexia. And I feel like I had more of the disordered eating, not necessarily full-blown medical eating disorder, where it's just irregular eating behaviors. And I was very conscious of how much I was consuming, and I was very conscious of the macronutrient density and just how much I was consuming because I wanted to be light. Doing triathlon helped me lose more weight because I became a runner and a cyclist. And and it almost cost me my swimming scholarship. By my junior year, my swim coach actually threatened me with my scholarship because my performance in swimming tanked big time. My performance in triathlon was awesome, but my performance in swimming tanked big time. So that was like the thing. So I had this disordered eating for maybe 2 years, but the threat of the scholarship, like, mentally, like, I'm like, what am I doing? This is serious. And I started taking weight gainers, and I went from I got as low as 105 pounds, and I got back up to 120 pounds my senior year, which is still very light for being 5'7". But, fast forward to going into my graduate degree in exercise science, which is more wellness management. As I was thinking of an idea for a thesis, I wanted to look at disordered eating disorders in collegiate athletes. And so in the beginning, I did a lot of my research at that college level. And then being the triathlete, I'm like, oh, I wonder what's going on with triathletes. Couldn't find anything. I could not find any research that looked at disordered eating disorders in triathletes. So that sparked my study. Again, the positive things that happened because I had this disordered eating. I did my thesis on eating training and prevalence of disordered eating among triathletes. I sent a couple hundred, I can't remember, questionnaires, valid, reliable questionnaires to the Wildflower Triathlon. I'm not even sure if that still exists in California.
It didn't, but it's coming back this year.
Okay, that's awesome. So this is back in the 90s. I graduated my master's degree in 1999. And then I sent a bunch of questionnaires to what used to be the Desert Sun half Ironman. in Grand Junction, Colorado. So none of these were 70.3. 70.3 didn't exist. They were called half Ironmans. And so let's say I sent 400 to one race, 400 to another. I probably got 400 back. So out of 800 questionnaires, maybe I got 400 back. And I had some men, a couple men and a couple women tell me their story. Like they went above and beyond answering the questionnaires. They told me their stories about having an eating disorder. And so it was just really a lot of information that wasn't out there among triathletes. So I got to write my thesis about it. I got to defend my thesis in 1999, and no one on my panel of educators knew, what I was talking about because it was such a new topic. And so defending my thesis was really easy because I was the expert. It was so cool.
Yeah, you were the only one who knew.
Yeah, because my main advisor, who was actually into wellness and eating disorders, she had left. She got another job. So I was left with my statistics guy, my stats guy. He became my advisor, and he's like, whatever, you passed, this was great, move on. Unfortunately, because I'm not really a writer, this is back in 1999, I never published it. And I recently did a Chat GPT question about looking for research on eating disorders, disordered eating among triathletes in the 90s. They couldn't find anything. I think the first study I found was 2002. I'm like, damn it, I need to publish this,
Right.
because I think right now with Red S, which is relative, so part of the big eating disorders back in the 90s, early 2000s was the female athlete triad. And so now it's Red S, and I'm spacing what Red S actually stands for: relative energy deficiency syndrome, which is similar to the female athlete triad. And I think now it's just athletes know more about it. And I think someone could look at my thesis and my study and take it and expand and continue doing research among triathletes. Because again, as a coach and triathlete, I think it's very prevalent. There's certain things that I see in athletes I coach that may be leading them on the path of, they probably have some disordered eating, in the fact that they're maybe following a certain popular diet, low carb. Again, for example, low carb. I think that's a trigger for an athlete who's following a low carb diet, that they have some eating issues that could turn into an eating disorder. I know a lot of young high school kids back in Colorado who were they had to be hospitalized because of their eating disorder, and they got to be like 80 pounds, and they're 5'5", 80 pounds. They unfortunately got too serious with their issue. So anyways, but that's how I kind of that was kind of my story of how I got all involved. And every year when I think about Eating Disordered Awareness Month, I've always wanted to do a podcast on it. And March is also National Nutrition Month, so it kind of goes hand in hand. And I think the main thing, again, for me and my disordered eating issue, it was more of a control thing. It was less of a body image thing, because I would look in the mirror and I'd see 105 pounds. I'd see how thin I was, but I really wasn't happy as a collegiate swimmer. So for me, now that I know about it, I think for me, it was more of a control thing. I could control what I put in and out of my body. And because I wasn't really happy as a collegiate swimmer, I just wanted to be done with that phase of my life. And it was just I think it's more of a mental disorder more than it is an actual eating disorder.
Right. And that's actually, so I went through years and years of group and individual therapy for eating disordered and disorder eating. And that's one thing I learned from especially in the group, because you hear everybody's stories and you hear everybody talking, and you're looking at them like, what's, why do you have an eating disorder? I know this is, again, another mental thing. Like, you're so thin, why do you need an eating disorder? Like, you look great or whatever. But It is. That's what I learned. I read a bunch of books through therapy and everything, that most people with an eating disorder, it is about control. And a lot of it stems from early childhood traumas. And that's why it's a control thing. And so that, I mean, I'm not an expert in trauma at all. I will definitely not go down the path because I don't know anything about it. But there's several really, really good books out there that talk about trauma and that talk about the prevalence of eating disorders in people with early childhood traumas. So that's not just speculation, and that's not just your experience. That's actually a big group of people. I would even dare say the majority of people with an eating disorder has to do with control.
Yeah, definitely. So as you were talking, I thought of two other things. When I was a college swimmer, I got into triathlon, multi-sport after my freshman year. And so I remember episodes that I never vomited. I didn't have that kind of bulimia, but I probably could classify myself as having exercise bulimia,
Yeah.
meaning I wouldn't eat to train. I would train to eat. So if I felt like I overate, I would get out on my bike or go for a swim or go for a run immediately. Like it was a mental thing. Like, oh my God, I ate too much. I gotta go burn off the calories. Or on the other extreme, if I knew I was going to have a big swim team fiesta with food, I would make sure I not only did my swim practice for that day, but I kind of hid. I'd go to the gym and I got I got a health club membership. We had gyms at our pool. I mean, we had the rec facility at our college, but I got another gym membership. So I would tell my friends or roommates wouldn't know where I was, but I'd be able to go drive to the gym and do extra biking or extra running. And I think about that now, how that is that exercise bulimia. I was very in control of calories in, calories out. I was very in control of making sure when I did eat, I would eat around people so that they saw me eating.
Right.
And so when I wasn't around people, I wouldn't eat. I would make sure I saved that so they didn't think I had a problem because they
Right.
saw me eat, but I'd eat very little. I was very in control of what I was putting in my body.
Right. Well, and I think that a couple things. One is that it's kind of like gambling. Do I have a problem gambling or not?
Mm-hmm.
If you are afraid to tell somebody that you spent $100 on, I don't know, whatever, gambling or whatever, or drinking, if you're drinking in private, or if you don't want people to know you have a drinking issue, like you drink 2 beers in front of your friends and then drink a 6-pack on the way home, if there's something inside you that is like being secretive or not telling anyone about it, to me, that says there's some sort of disorder in there.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's something, for you guys to think about in any area of your life. If you're hiding something, then there might be something that you want to look at.
That's usually a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the other thing that reminded me of is, I feel like nowadays it's way different. It's better. It's out there. We have videos and podcasts and people are more transparent. We have social media. And so eating disorders and disordered eating are out in the open more than they used to be, like when we were kids. But I just want to say this in case anyone's listening and wondering, like, oh, what's my problem? I'm not throwing up. I don't have bulimia. I'm not starving myself. I don't have anorexia. Then I don't have a problem. So disordered eating and eating disorders now are pretty much anything where you're struggling with something that has to do with food, exercise, body image, overeating, emotional overeating. Those are all forms of eating disorders. that you can get help for. So if you're thinking like, oh, I struggle because I count my calories and then I do my exercise and I count my calories and I do my exercise and all I think about is food and exercise all the time and it's giving me a headache and I'm exhausted. That's an eating disorder, and talking to a professional would be a great place to start. I think that when Wendy and I were in college, the only people that we considered that had an eating disorder were people who were either binging and purging or starving themselves. That's it. If you didn't fall into those things, you were fine. You didn't have a disorder. You were just left alone to struggle with exercise bulimia.
Preoccupation with food. If you have any sort of preoccupation with food, you don't have an eating disorder, but you have disordered eating.
Yes.
We need food to survive. It's just something that we can't live without. But if you're constantly thinking, how much exercise do I have to do so I can eat that piece of cake or I can eat that donut? What do I have to do to earn it? If you feel like you have to train or exercise to earn calories, you have a preoccupation with food. You have you're in that spectrum of an eating disorder. My college roommate, she had very bad bulimia. Oh my God. Whenever we would see her gorge herself and then she'd always go to the bathroom. One summer she worked at Dairy Queen and she had buckets of empty syrup, caramel syrup and chocolate syrup that you put on your Dairy Queen underneath her bed. One time we saw that and I'm like, so she probably would come home at night and just eat it. And then she would purge it because she was really, really thin. I feel someone's pain when they have preoccupation with food because I did. And again, I'm glad my issue wasn't that as serious as it could have been. But I think people who are preoccupied with food are very sad. They're in a sad place. And so I always feel sad for them because I was in that place before and it's not a happy place.
Yeah. I got to the point where I was exhausted. So,
right. Yeah.
In college, I did a great job. My dorm was the fitness center. Like I walk out my door and I can go to the fitness center whenever I wanted to. And so we would eat dinner and then go to the fitness center. We'd eat breakfast and go to the fitness center. And it was manageable because I was 17, 18, 19, 20 years old and I had more energy and it was just part of my life. And then in my 20s, I worked at a gym. I've worked at gyms my whole life.
Right.
And so it was easy to manage because I had the energy to be preoccupied with the food, to burn the calories with the exercise. And then I remember I did my first Ironman in 2001 and I lost like 30 pounds just because I'd never done that before. I wasn't a runner. I wasn't a cyclist. Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden, like you said at the beginning, Wendy, you started biking and running and you started losing pounds. I lost weight and I felt amazing and I looked amazing. And for the first time in my entire life, for as long as I can remember, even back when I was 4 and 5 years old, for the first time in my life, I liked the way I looked. And the week before the Ironman, I went out and I bought, don't do this. Don't do this, you guys. The week before the Ironman, I went out and bought 3 new pair of jeans. And they were the smallest jeans I had worn since like 6th grade. And I was like, oh my gosh, I look so good. I finally like my body. After 25 years, I like my body. And then I did the Ironman. And then I stopped training because you have to take a break. And then I gained it all back within like 3 months. Plus I was sick right after the Ironman because I was completely overtrained. We can go into a whole episode about overtraining and how detrimental it is to your health. But I could never wear those pants again. And I even saved them for like 10 years because in that 10 years, I did like 6 more Ironmans, 7 or 8 more. I did an Ironman almost every year. But my body was starting to adapt to what I was doing. And I never went back down to that weight. Ended up giving my pants away sadly, because they looked really good, but it was unsustainable. I couldn't, and then I just got depressed. And so that's when I sought help. And I went to a very well-known sports psychologist who focuses on eating disorders in Fort Collins. And she was amazing. But the first session I had with her, she told me that she would not work with me unless I was willing to try to accept myself where I was at. That doesn't mean I can't. Huh?
You worked with Jane.
Yes. I love Jane. Bless her heart. She passed away. She was one of probably the most amazing women I'd ever met in my life. And anyone who knows her from Northern Colorado, she was a professional runner. She went to the Olympic trials. She's a phenomenal human.
And she was in one of my grad school classes, a wellness class that we partnered up with. It was a wellness communication class.
Yeah, she was awesome. So she said, I can't work with you unless you're willing to right now accept yourself where you're at. That doesn't mean you can't improve on where you're at, but you have to learn to accept yourself. And I was like, absolutely not.
Oh my God.
I wasn't willing to. It didn't make sense to me at the time, because I'm like, if I accept myself where I'm at, then I'm not going to strive to be better. It was that was my mindset at the time. I was in my late 20s, early 30s. And my mindset was absolutely not. I don't want to get complacent. I don't want to be mediocre, and I'm not going to accept myself where I'm at. And so I actually didn't work with her for 6 more months. But in those 6 months, I became exhausted, mentally, physically, emotionally, trying to control everything, trying to make it all make sense in my head, trying to get back down to that one day before Ironman weight. And it was exhausting. And finally, I gave up because I just could not keep doing it. And I went and saw her, and I'm like, whatever you need me to do, I'm going to do. Yeah. And I worked with her for, I want to say 8 or 9 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I worked with her for a really long time. She helped me a lot with a lot of things.
Yeah. So as you were talking, a lot of athletes, which is normal, I want to do an Ironman or 70.3 or a marathon to lose weight. And if someone wants to hire me and that's their only why, I will not coach them. There needs to be more of a why for doing an endurance event or a certain sport, more than just weight loss. I understand some people who are morbidly obese, and they really need to work out and exercise and have that journey to a marathon or an Ironman or a big endurance event, and they will lose weight. But for the everyday Joe, there needs to be more of a why and a reason if you want to be coached by me to do a certain event, and it can't just be weight loss. Yeah. Weight loss may or may not happen. Generally speaking, because of the fueling that's required for an Ironman marathon to be able to perform and get through it, it may not lead to any weight loss, and that's fine. We'll work on this. You don't have to do a marathon or an Ironman to lose weight at all. So again, going back to your story, I will not work with an athlete if that's their only why.
Yeah, right. And we actually talked about this on another episode. I think it might have been our nutrition or one of the listener questions, that if you are wanting to lose weight, if you're planning on training for an Ironman or an ultra or some endurance event, you should work on that nutrition, weight loss before.
Yeah.
Because once you start training, it's not going to happen. It rarely happens. I mean, it happens, but like Wendy said, it could or couldn't happen. Mm-hmm. So yeah, having more of a why. The other thing, and again, this is a whole nother episode, is if you're doing an endurance event and you don't have a strong why, and weight loss for most people, they think as a strong why because it's consumes them because of the messages from the media and the outside impact. You think it's a big why, but in the grand scheme of life, it really isn't. And if you're on mile 90 of the bike and you're exhausted and you know you still have to get off the bike and run a marathon and you don't have a big why, it's too easy to quit.
Yeah. Yeah, because you ain't losing weight during that Ironman race day.
No, you're eating so much. I've counted my calories because I have people ask me, they're like, how many calories do you take in during an Ironman? So one of my races in my race report, I had actually calculated it. I don't know offhand, but it was a lot of calories. Like on the bike alone, I take in between 300 and 400 calories an hour.
Yeah.
So, and I used to not. So this is another, for health reasons. And like Wendy said, a lot of athletes, you know, they might develop an eating disorder or disordered eating because they want to lose weight. But to be a healthy athlete and perform at your best, you have to take in the calories for recovery and during your racing and training. And I used to try to race with like one bottle of Gatorade, like an Olympic distance where I was burning, 2,500 calories or whatever. And my one bottle of Gatorade was 100 calories. And I would use that to get through. And I always lost steam at the end. I was never super strong on the bike. I was always throwing up after the run until I started eating more calories during my race. And now I eat. And the reason I was trying to do it is I'm like, oh, I'm racing. I might as well use this time to lose some weight. So I'm just going to drink one bottle of Gatorade for a 2.5 hour race. And it doesn't work that way if you want to perform well.
Yeah, that's interesting. So back in my first Ironman days in 1997, I was in grad school. So it was my second year of grad school. I was 135 pounds ish, at 5'7". It was just kind of the normal weight. I was a pizza delivery driver. And then I also was delivering for Kentucky Fried Chicken. And I used to eat that crap. I ate so much pizza and so much chicken. I didn't gain weight. I didn't lose weight training for my first Ironman, but I kind of maintained my weight because I was eating so much crap because that was free.
Right.
We would get free meals. And back then I used to eat meat. So it's funny looking back at all the crap I used to eat. And then after my first Ironman, because I had post Ironman depression syndrome and I didn't stop training, I got really sick. I had to take 6 months off. I gained like 20 pounds. So now all of a sudden, 6 months later, I weigh 155. It's not I'm not huge, but 155 pounds on me was quite, puffy looking,
Right.
and all I did was eat during that 6 months because I was so chronically
Fatigued.
fatigued and I
Yeah.
was just trying to do what I could to recover, and I couldn't get full, and my body and my hormones and everything was so out of whack, but I could eat. And so I remember, like 6 months later getting back and training again. So now we're back into 1998. And I'm like, I really had to that's the first time I had to figure out my why. So I'd been in the sport for 5 or 6 years already. Again, former collegiate swimmer, but I never really thought about the why. But back in 1998, me personally, me, myself, and I, no coaching, had to really figure out, why do I do this? Why do I do this to my body? I don't want to get sick again. I don't want to overtrain. So through all this overtraining and illness and injury and all that, I'm like, I don't want to get injured. I don't want to overtrain. But I kind of associated what I was doing with illness and injury. I'm like, I don't want to do this to my body. Why am I doing this? And why do I do this? Because I think back then the initial why was, well, I did Kona once. I got 10th in my age group. I want to be on the podium. So I'm going to continue on my Ironman journey, but I'm going to read and learn and educate myself more. I'm in the exercise science department, and I just need to do all the reading I can. There's no internet. We read books, and I just started educating myself about nutrition and recovery big time. I didn't educate myself about how to train, how to recover. I remember reading Mark Allen's book, Dave Scott's book about recovery and nutrition. And that kind of changed my life, to say, okay, 1999, I'm going to try another Ironman, see what happens.
Right.
And then I went in the opposite direction. I took too much time off after my second Ironman, gained a lot of weight because I took too much time off because I learned from the first one, you have to stop training, you have to recover. I took like 3 or 4 or 5 months off and then I gained all that weight. So it kind of went to both extremes. And I'm like, okay, what am I doing to myself? I hate this weight fluctuation. It doesn't have to be this way. I need to figure out what I'm doing. And again, that's why I became a coach, because I had to figure this stuff out like you did, kind of like the harder way by going through the illness and injury and overtraining to figure it out. And 33 years later, I'm still doing it.
Right.
I'm still doing triathlon. I'm not trying to figure it out anymore. I'm doing it better.
Right.
For longevity in the sport, educate yourself and do it better.
Yeah, for sure. So one thing I wanted to talk about, because there might be people listening that are like, I'm never going to do an Ironman, but all this eating stuff you're talking about, it's starting to make sense because this is what I feel like. And I don't want to talk about like tricks and tools and how to like get through each day, because that's something that you can develop with a therapist or a group. I highly recommend, if you are feeling any of these things, if any of this sounds familiar, especially the just constant thinking about either food or your body or your weight or, anything that sounds like anything that exhausts you mentally, physically, or emotionally, I feel like is in that disorder spectrum. And definitely talk to a therapist, talk to somebody about it. You could even find like free online groups. You could even, Overeaters Anonymous is just like Alcoholics Anonymous. They follow a 12-step program. They have like online, like telephone meetings. Like there's a lot of resources that are free if you're thinking like, oh, I don't have access to therapy. And there's definitely free resources. And then with social media and online groups, there's free, even just to support groups with people you don't know, that you can just kind of know that you're not alone. But I feel like I spent years and years and years doing all these tricks and tools like distraction. And I had a little jar that, like, if I felt like eating when I wasn't hungry, I'd pull from the jar and be like, take a walk. There's lots of little things you can do, but it all ends up still being exhausting. So I just got tired of like always having a tool to deal with it. But I think it's a really good place to start if you haven't been there. But what I wanted to talk about is some things that you can do for self-love and self-care, which Wendy and I did a whole episode about that last week. Because honestly, taking care of yourself, doing unhealthy things to eat less, exercise more. We both talked about some of the unhealthy things we've done around disordered eating are unhealthy physically, mentally, and emotionally. And to me, that's saying I don't love myself enough to take care of myself for longevity and health and wellness. And if you're deep in the throes of it, you need to see a therapist. You need to check yourself into a recovery program. You need to do that first. But if you are just have some disordered eating or some body image issues or body dysmorphia, doing some things to really take care of yourself and honor yourself can go a long way. And I know for me, if I think about like if I eat too much, because I still have this same thought process as I did 30 years ago. If I eat too much, all I want to do is work out. But what I care about more right now in the second half of my life is my health and wellness and longevity. So I know that it's not going to do me any good if after I eat a big meal I have a gym at my apartment. I could go run on the treadmill for 2 hours, but that's going to interrupt my training. It's going to interrupt my sleep, and it's not going to stop the cycle. And I need to love myself and care about my life more than I care about what I physically look like.
That's
And
great.
I know that's a lot. Like, you're like, oh, it's easy to say. It's easy to say. It is. And I'm 52 years old, and I've had disordered eating, body image issues since I was 12 years old. When I got my first job at Burger King, speaking of jobs where we ate meat, I didn't eat meat, but I worked at Burger King. My first paycheck, I went and joined a gym. When I was 13, my first paycheck, my mom took me to Mademoiselle. It was an all women's membership gym as a franchise. And I joined the gym. My first paycheck when I was 13, because I wanted to lose weight. So I have been dealing with this. I'm 52 since I was 13 years old. So it's not easy, and it's taken me years and years to get to this place. But I want you guys to think about what is truly important to me, and how can I best take care of myself so that I can take care of others, so that I can live a long, healthy, fulfilling life, and so I can feel good mentally, physically, and emotionally.
I love it.
So what would you say, Wendy, some of the self-love, I know the word body positivity
I mean,
gets
I think
thrown around.
yeah, I mean, I think you just said it all. I think the first thing is, if you're having some struggles and you're not a happy person and it's really bringing you down and it's exhausting and it's just always on your mind, what do I get to eat? When do I train? Eat, train, eat, train, eat, train. Seeking out professional help is the best thing to do. You don't not, and talking, you can reach out to one of us. I mean, we've been there. Go to someone you trust. It helps to be able to discuss this
Mm-hmm.
topic with someone who can relate to you and understands what you're going through, because they've gone through it before as well.
Right.
And again, in the big scheme of things, what are your values in life? What are all the other positive things in your life, like work, family, relationships are a huge thing, your kids. And for longevity in life, is this something that you want to control you for the rest of your life? Is a preoccupation with food or body image? And again, it's the best thing to do is just discuss it with a professional.
Yeah, 100%. And the thing about, for athletes, I think it's actually helpful if you really care about your performance, because if you're underfueling or if you're overtraining, you're not going to perform well. So again, making the decisions of, am I going to skip this meal and potentially not perform as well? What's more important to me? And in the moment, it might be skipping your meal. So you might have to think about, a month in advance, a year in advance, which I know is challenging for a lot of people. But thinking about, in the grand scheme of life, what will my future self be? What's going to be best for my future self?
Exactly. Yeah. You always got to think about the future. And again, like I already said, you want to make sure you're eating to train, not training to eat, is really important for athletes.
Yeah. And I think just knowing you're not alone. Like
Mhm.
back when we were in college, Wendy and I were in college, there was no internet. There was you had like campus meetings and whatever. There was a girl in my dorm that she was bulimic. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. How easy. Like, you just eat and then you throw up. Like, that would be nice. And I was like, this exercising thing gets exhausting, but it's what worked for me. But it wasn't really talked about. And now that there's more people that are open about it, just let this be something that you talk about with people. Let this be something, because anytime that you feel connected to somebody, and we talked about this in our relationship podcast, and you have a common ground, and you're not alone, that pays dividends. That's why support groups are so, grief groups, AA, Al-Anon. That's why these groups are so valuable, is because you connect with people that have the same thought process as you, and you're like, thank God I'm not alone. that I'm not the only one who feels this way, that I'm not the only one who thinks like this.
Mm-hmm. So four little key points kind of as a summary that I jotted down, but we kind of already talked about it, is sustainability over short-term goals, making sure you fuel adequately and avoid restrictive diets, because in the long haul, that could cause you to binge.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've all had those moments where we were
I'm
busy
not
all
gonna eat,
day.
I'm not gonna eat, I'm not gonna eat.
I'm not going to eat. I forgot to eat. I'm like, how could you forget to eat? When someone tells me they forget to eat, I call their bluff. I'm like, you did not forget to eat. You did that intentionally. Make sure you're listening to your body, recognize signs of hunger, making sure you need to think about the best way to recover is to immediately fuel after a long or intense workout, because that's only going to help your performance. And if you value your performance, it's a no-brainer. Be flexible on your fueling strategies, finding what works for you, whether it's a popular labeled diet or intuitive eating, whatever the case may be. Find something that's going to work for you and help you sustainability for the long haul. And like we already said, seeking out community support is probably the biggest thing that's going to help you.
Yeah. I have a couple resources. The National Eating Disorder, wait, that's the week. Eating Disorder, what is it called? It's the NEDA, National Eating Disorder Association, NEDA,
Mm-hmm.
NEDA. So National Eating Disorder Association, it's a organization, and they have unlimited resources. They have so many resources on their website. So it's the NEDA, NEDA website. Definitely check there, because they're going to have a lot of low cost and free resources. If you're sitting there thinking like, oh, therapy would be nice, but I can't afford it. There's lots of free resources there. And I just wanted to share my 3 favorite books. So I probably read in that 10-year journey, 100 books. I read so many books because I felt like I was alone. And if you're older and you're like, oh my God, this is ridiculous, just know you're not alone. There was a while that I quit. I was in a support group, and it was in Fort Collins. Granted, it's a college town. It was me and like 10 college girls. And I was like in my 40s. I think I was like early 40s or late 30s, early 40s at the time. And I'm like, what is wrong with me? Like, why am I still dealing with this and still feeling this way after all this time? Isn't this like a teenager disorder?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not. And for me, it's still in my mind. I still have the urge to try not to eat as much or to exercise when I eat too much. I have these urges, but I've found something more important within me that keeps me from acting on them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's kind of like, I'm not an alcoholic. I don't drink. I've drinking once in my whole life, but I feel like an alcoholic, most people, they want to keep drinking, right? They're an alcoholic. They want to have a drink, but they don't have a drink. And they might forever wish they could have a drink, but they don't. And that's what I feel like for me, my eating disorder, disordered eating, all that stuff, my body dysmorphia, all that stuff. I feel like I always have it in my head, and it's still more exhausting and it takes up more space than I want it to, but I'm not going to act on it because my values have changed. And so if you're older and you're thinking, oh, isn't this a teenager thing? You're not alone, I promise.
No.
But my 3 favorite books that I read that have stayed with me over the years, number 1 is called When Food is Love. And it's by Janine Roth. And Wendy mentioned intuitive eating. And this is someone who struggled with eating her whole life. And as an adult, she started a movement called intuitive eating. So her name is Janine Roth. She has probably 20 books, but When Food is Love, I think, was her first book. And it kind of talks about how we use food to fill some place where we feel empty. My second favorite one is called Eating in the Light of the Moon. And it's stories. And at first I was like, this book is going to be ridiculous because it's stories, and I don't like stories. I don't like fiction. I don't like anything like that. But this book moved me. And I even got a tattoo, this labyrinth, because of that book. So it's a really powerful book called Eating in the Light of the Moon. And then the third one is called Shades of Hope. And I can't think of who the authors are. The Eating in the Light of the Moon is like multiple writers, but Shades of Hope, I can't remember. But it was very impactful for me as well. So I'm sure there's so many amazing books. If you guys have read books that have helped you with this, let us know. Put it in the comments so that other people can get those resources and start working on healing this within themselves.
Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. Do you have any listener questions, Wendy?
I have a listener question. Kind of goes in with the topic. This particular person is a male, and he was asking about race weight and what my thoughts are on a particular race weight. And to keep my answer simple, is your race weight is whatever weight you are when you're racing. More or less. I know, again, people can have an obsession with trying to get to that race weight. And this athlete is only into his second year. So, we don't really have any, data to say where his best performances have been and if your best performance was at a particular race weight or not. In 2008, my best performance ever, winning the Ironman World Championship as an amateur, I was vegan. That's when I started the vegan journey for 3 months leading up to that race, because I wanted to be at a certain, I didn't know I was get to the weight I was, but I did want to drop 5 more pounds. And the only way I knew I would drop 5 more pounds is if I cut out Starbucks pastries. I was eating a lot of Starbucks. And I'm like, okay, let's cut out. I was close to vegan. I had feta cheese, Greek yogurt. I didn't really eat any meat at that time, but I needed to cut out cheese and dairy. So I just had mentally had to say, if I make the choice to cut out some dairy, again, this is part of disordered eating, I won't be eating those Starbucks pastries. I couldn't just say I don't want to eat a pastry. I had to cut out a food group. And the weight just started melting off my body. But I also had a part-time job, and I had all the time in the world to train.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
What was the reason? And I had the best performance of my life.
Yeah.
After that year, I gained a pound every week for 12 weeks after that Ironman. And I was still vegan, but I was still kind of more of a junk food vegan. And the next year, 2009, I thought I had to get back down to that race weight that I was in 2008, because I thought that was the key to my performance. And I did it again 3 months leading up to I was kind of like doing it too quickly, too fast, because all of a sudden I'm like 2 or 3 months out and I'm like, I was 6 pounds heavier than I was in 2008. So I did it probably the wrong way. I tried to get down to that race weight. I didn't get down to the race weight I was in 2008, but I probably lost 4 more pounds, and it was a lot of muscle. I had the worst performance I've ever had. And I just think I lost a lot of strength and muscle because I tried to lose weight the wrong way. And so I have issues with people trying to make a race weight, because that really is really doesn't matter what your race weight is. What matters is that you follow a progressive training plan. You understand the plan, you understand the details, you understand the intention. You try to execute to the best of your ability your training plan that's going to lead to the performance that you're going to attain. You perform, you learn from it, you change some things, some zones, some endurance, some tempo, you change some things, and then you try to perform better in the next race. There's so much more to performance than the overall time. You always have to take in consideration the wind, the nutrition, the weather, just so many other factors leading up to the race is going to impact your performance. So don't get over analytical about a certain race weight.
Right. And sleep and recovery. Sleep and recovery. If you're sleeping well and recovering well and your nutrition is well and all that is balanced, your race is going to be amazing.
amazing at whatever weight that you are on that day.
Exactly. I know. I feel you though. I go back and forth again. I'm like kind of chase a race weight, but I know intellectually that's not the key. And so then I go back and forth with like, okay, you're smarter than this, Kirsten. It's something like subconsciously and emotional inside me that wants to attain this race weight, but intellectually I know that it's not a thing. All right, here's my question. Is it possible I'm doing too much strength training? I'm still gaining. And then she said she's up 19 pounds since last August. So in 6 months, she's gained 19 pounds. She strength trains. I strength train 3 times a week for an hour at 80%. So I did ask her a few more questions because if somebody asks me this, I'm going to ask them what their goals are. Like I know because I coach her. She's training for a 70.3, her first one. But what's more important to you? Do you love strength training? Is the strength training, when you say, is it too much? Is it affecting your other workouts? What's your priority? Those are the things that I asked her. And I haven't got a response because this was just like, I think yesterday or the day before she asked me, but I thought it would be valuable just to kind of, mention, because as a personal trainer, I know a lot of people who start training really hard and they gain weight and they're like, oh, it's okay, I've gained muscle. It could be muscle, but it could also be, if you gain muscle, your muscles retain water. It could be other things. I 100%, if this is you right now, if you're like, I've been lifting weights and I'm gaining weight, if you're not wanting to gain weight and it's not getting in the way of your training, get a body fat test, because that will tell you if you're gaining muscle or gaining fat. And if you love doing it, do it. To me, the only way you're training weightlifting too much is if it's affecting your endurance training, if that's your priority. If your priority is strength, you can train 7 days a week.
Let me jump in there. So when an athlete asks that, like just the fact that this athlete asked, am I strength training too much because I gained 19 pounds? She's worried, oh my God, I've gained 19 pounds. Is it because I'm strength training too much? And I would also consider saying, okay, talk about the goals, talk about the worries. Why are you asking the question? Because again,
Right.
Of course, if you love to strength train 3 days a week, don't stop. Don't let it get in the way of anything else in your life if it's something you enjoy doing. And if you're worried about a body composition thing, again, there's a little preoccupation with food maybe. Get the body fat test, know how much lean muscle you have. Hopefully she's had one before, so she knows what that 19
Compare.
pounds is. Look at, are you lifting to build mass? I mean, there's a certain protocol that you have to follow. You have to eat more and you have to lift a certain amount of weight to gain weight. 19 pounds is a lot to me. So I think there could be a little dietary analysis that also should go on with this athlete if she's concerned for any reason about where this 19 pounds is muscle or, or body fat. So yeah, there's a lot going on there.
Yeah. And if you're, so I learned that if you're trying to build muscle and you're lifting heavy and fueling for building muscle, on average, you can build between 1 to 2 pounds of muscle a month.
Mm-hmm.
That's if you're actively trying to build muscle and fueling for that. So 19 pounds in 6 months probably is not all muscle.
Right.
So I also asked her about stress and sleep, because to me, like when people come to me and they're concerned about weight gain, if it was 6 months ago, I said, what are you doing differently today than you were doing 6 months ago?
Mm-hmm.
And let's just start there. And if you say nothing, then I'll ask specific questions. Is your sleep any different? Is your stress level any different? Blah, 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 blah. And she did respond to that. Her sleep and her stress are a little bit different. Her stress is a lot different. So that is definitely plays a role in that.
Yeah. So again, great questions. A lot of follow-up questions are needed with that question, but I think we,
I think
we answered it.
Yeah, and I think for you guys out there, if you're a body fat there's so many machines nowadays that most gyms have some sort of like a bioimpedance fat test, like, and there's scales. You can go buy a scale for like $30 now that shows your body fat, and you can track it. You could get the calipers. There's ways to track body fat that are really simple, and it's a better measure of what's going on inside your body than just the scale.
Right. And again, if you are ever going to pursue a muscle mass increase, like I lost a lot of muscle mass when I had my patella surgery. I lost a lot of weight. A lot of that was muscle mass because I did do the body composition measurements with a tape measure. Measure your bicep, measure your chest, measure your thigh, measure your calf, measure your waist. And that's a good way to know if you're going to be gaining mass in the right areas that you're trying to gain it in, as well as, again, if I gain weight, if I gain circumference around my waist, I know it's fat.
Right.
If I gain circumference around my thigh, I know it's muscle. That's just my body. That's my body type.
Right. And also, if you gain 19 pounds, you can look at yourself in the mirror. And if you're gaining that much in muscle, you'll be able to tell.
Those guns. The guns.
All right. What are you most excited about for the week coming up?
What am I most excited about for the week? Well, it's still my birth month, so I still have a lot of plans that I want to get done for me this month. Unfortunately, my annual haircut isn't going to happen until next month.
Oh no.
My hair person, I won't go to anyone else because I've gone to her the last 3 or 4 years. She's out. She had a baby. And so she's not going to be back till April. And so I have to I'm on kind of the waiting list for April because she's limited work hours. Right. But again, I'm kind of disappointed because I love my annual haircut in March. So I'm looking forward to that in April. And just continuing on with my fun things that I'm doing for my birth month. It's I kind of allow myself to have less stress. Not that I don't really have stress, but sometimes I may overschedule and that leads to a little bit more anxiety, not really stress, but anxiety. But I kind of don't do that during my birth month. I'm still in my self-care month. So kind of just looking forward to everything. I have two big swim meets that I'm coaching the kids, and I have 2 events that I'm going to do. And that's about, like events that the weekends I'm not doing swim meets. And so just kind of the same old stuff that I like to do.
Yeah. I am getting my tattoo finished tomorrow.
Yay.
So that's my big excitement for the week. You know what's funny? I don't have anything like on my mind that's exciting coming up. And so while you were talking about your birthday month, I actually went through my schedule really quick. I was like, what do I have this week? I don't even know. Because we were out of town all last week for the last 6 days. And I'm kind of on like, just get back into a routine mode, which I love. That's what I'm excited about. I love being in my routine.
That's awesome.
I feel so much better when I'm like back to my normal me stuff.
And sometimes you have to take a vacation from your vacation to get back into your routine.
Exactly. Yeah. Luckily, my daughter's dad offered to take her the night after we got back. And it's normally my night with her. And I was like, yes, please.
Yay. That's good.
Yeah, I was grateful for that. So, all right, you guys, let us know what you think. Let us know what you want us to talk about. Share your wellness wins because we want to know how excited you are about your life.
Yes. Love it.
Awesome. All right. Make it a great
day.
Yeah. We did it. All right. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Wellness Made Easy with Wendy and Kirsten.
If you want to learn more about us or anything we talked about today, check out the links in our show notes.
We would love to know what you think of our podcast and what you want more of. So drop us a comment, send us a message, and help us out by leaving us a rating and a review.
And don't forget to let us know your wellness win for this week.
Thanks for listening.
Make it a great day.